Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB Bikini Pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Today's episode is not just an audio podcast. We are also doing video. So if you want to watch this interview, head over to YouTube at celestial_fit, where you can catch all the podcasts, but especially those that are on video. You might as well check it out, especially if you're bored during cardio. It is such great entertainment, and it's something I've been really happy we've been doing more of on this show. So today's athlete works as an interior designer and server, and she's now going back to college to get her PT cert for her own personal knowledge and application in this journey, which I find fascinating, and I'm excited to hear more about that. And prior to competing, she played basketball, softball, and volleyball for me too, throughout high school. And she first competed on a whim after her now fiancé actually challenged her to do it. And she stepped on stage for the first time in 2019 and went pro at the Arnold Amateur this year after 6 shows. And this past weekend, she just placed, well, I shouldn't say this past weekend, the past weekend from when we're recording it, because this is going to come out later, but she just placed 5th at the Vancouver Pro show, which is so impressive. And she is one day out from the Chicago Pro, and she's doing this with us. So this is such an honor. Welcome to the podcast, Rhoda Allie. How are you doing?
Hi, Celeste. Thank you so much for having me. I am absolutely thrilled and floored to be here. I could not pass up on this opportunity. So excited.
Oh, I'm so happy you're here too, especially being one day out. Like, I know sometimes the stress of a show, and then there's other times where you're just in downtime. So I appreciate you, staying true to this commitment. And before we get into everything, I got to ask if there is anything you do or think about, or maybe a ritual you have before your heel hits the stage.
Yes. I mean, I wouldn't say it's really a ritual, but I definitely go over my mandatories. So just all the cues that I've kind of set up for myself. So chest up, make sure my arm's not bent, twist as much as possible. And then I just remind myself to have fun. I think for me with competing, that's probably the most important thing, is to just make sure I'm having fun and I'm enjoying it all. So yeah, like, all the hard work's done. It's just time to showcase everything you've put in all the time and effort into.
Yes, I love that you just listed some of the cues you have for posing as well, because it's nice to hear other competitors' cues. Sometimes it gives you new ideas as well. Like you said, to twist, and you said to keep your chest up. The chest up thing is something I'm working on, because I realize my shoulders tend to round. So like when I think chest up, I pull them back more. So I totally get that. And I think that your posing is absolutely beautiful. And it was so awesome to see you have such a successful weekend last weekend. So talk to us about what that felt like for you to have your pro debut and place 5th. That was not your pro debut, or was it?
No, it was my pro
debut. It was.
Shaking my head in like awe, because I'm like reliving at the moment. It was unreal. Like, absolutely unreal. It's probably the best show that I've had to date, just from the support that I had leading up to the show from my friends and my family, my coworkers, James, absolutely unreal. And then just being at the show in itself. And as a pro, like, I thought they treated amateurs really well, but pros, it's like next level. So it was an awesome experience, and the promoters did a great job putting on the show. And it was nice that Ashley Kay was there as well. So that was an unreal experience for my pro debut.
Yeah, you got to get compared to the GOAT.
Yeah.
Literally too, because you were up there in that top 5, and it was an amazing lineup. Like, that was absolutely incredible. And it takes a lot, I think, for a pro to start over again. They say, you enter the pro league, now you're back at where do I stand among these women after you earned your pro card. So what was the feedback from this show that led you to now be competing again this weekend?
I think for me, it's just to continuously just grow, right? And each time you step on stage, you want to make sure that you're making improvements, and regardless of what that looks like. So my main feedback was just to continue to grow my upper and outer glutes, which I think a lot of us hear often, especially
Yeah.
if we want competitive to some of these top level athletes like Ashley and Lauralee and Maureen. Those are some assets that those are kind of like their strong points. So developing my upper outer glutes and then just coming in a little bit fuller. So going into this peak week, we had manipulated my fats and my carbs to hopefully try and bring that look. So I'm excited to see what my package looks like tomorrow.
Yeah, that's so exciting. So are you eating more going into this show?
I am eating so much more. It's insane. I'm pretty sure my carbs and my fats have doubled from what I was eating the week prior, but it's good because my body's responding really well, and my coach is happy with my check-ins. So we're just gonna keep doing that, and fingers crossed, hope for the best tomorrow.
Yeah. So what are your goals tomorrow or even just as a pro now?
um, like I mentioned, I absolutely love the sport, and I do it because it fuels me and I have so much fun doing it. I love being surrounded by the community. So my main goal is to just make sure I'm having fun at the core, and then obviously improving from show to show. In terms of tangible goals, first call outs is kind of what I'm shooting for. I think that's what I always shoot for. And then, we'll see.
Yeah, that is awesome. So you said earlier that the experience as a pro and the treatment you got was different than that as an amateur. So what were some things that have stood out to you from the amateur experience versus pro?
Yeah, I would say just being on top of communicating things, just knowing exactly where you needed to go, people physically like walking you to where your tan was or where you would be pumping up, and just knowing what time you would get on stage. I think between the amateur and the pro league, the communication I would say is a lot better. And then just having a bit more privacy as well backstage. So
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the coolest parts is you guys always have your own section or your own room. And I remember like in some of my very first competitions, you'd walk by the pro room and you're like, wait, they have their own room? Like, and it's got everything they need and it's just really cool. And like you guys obviously deserve that, right? You earned that. It's part of it's like part of the benefit of entering that league and having that prestige that you bring to the stage as well. But I'm so interested in you just getting into this sport in general because you're talking about how important it is to have fun and how much it's added to your lifestyle, but it started off as a challenge. So, like a challenge from your fiance, not a challenge. So, when you decided to compete and part of that was also to prove him wrong because you don't want people to like think that you can't do something. So, did you ever expect to end up where you are now?
no, not at all. We live fairly close by to a theater where they put on a lot of shows, and Tyler, my fiance, had actually competed as well in that same year, and I watched him go through the process and go through his journey. And I don't even know, it just came up in conversation, and somehow he made a comment, and I was like, you know what, like I'm just gonna prove you wrong. And so I did the show on a whim. This was back in 2019. I think I did like a short 6 week prep, and I just hopped on stage, like crossed my fingers, and no idea what I was getting into, but I fell in love with the sport. And that was the year of COVID. And so I wasn't able to keep going, unfortunately, and then just kind of got back up into it mid last year. And now we're here.
That is so amazing. So I know you don't remember the exact comment, but how does he feel about you being where you are now after having kind of placed that in your mind?
He is so proud of me. It's crazy. Like neither of us really saw this happening. We've just kind of been taking it day by day, show by show. And yeah, I can just feel how proud he is of me. And he's very, very happy of me. And he's been so supportive throughout all of this. So I'm very grateful for him.
Aw, I think that is awesome because you also said he was a competitor. Does he still compete?
He's in he's not physically prepping for a show right now, but he's living the lifestyle and he's hoping to step on stage again soon when the time is right.
Yeah, that I totally get that. So, did you witness him living the lifestyle and going through the process before committing to it yourself?
Yes, yeah, I did. But I love a good challenge. So just the fact that he didn't think that I could do it just made me want to prove him wrong.
Yeah.
Mind, I will say, as a bikini competitor, my prep was definitely not as hard as his was whatsoever. Already in pretty good condition. Back then, the standards were obviously a little bit different than what they are now. And so the package that I brought on stage in 2019 definitely wouldn't stand a chance up against the package that's on stage now. But it worked back in 2019. So
What was your perception of the process when he was doing it, and how did it compare to what you ended up needing to do or need to do now to get ready?
um, I saw his process as a challenge, and I I love challenging myself, right? And so I didn't necessarily know what I was getting myself into, but I knew that regardless of what I needed to do, I was going to get it done. So
Well, you were a triple threat athlete in high school, so I imagine you have that competitive drive in you.
yeah, and I mean, it's always, yes, I'm competitive in the terms of like I wanting to prove other people wrong, but it's when I do commit to something, it's also just to prove myself that I can do it.
Yeah, I think that's really awesome. Do you feel like your background in athletics contributed at all to your mindset in this sport now?
I would say so 100% for sure.
Yeah, sometimes like I hit the gym and when I'm training, like I try to tap into that athletic version of me because even though bodybuilding is a sport, the strategy and the athletic demand is just different compared to something like volleyball, which we can relate to. Like you're
Yeah,
not running lines and you're not running drills. Like it's just different, but the focus, the mentality, the commitment to be better, the showing up every single day to improve, like that is all the same. And I think a lot of times athletes who already have that athlete mentality, like they find a new way to bring it back into their life, whereas maybe they missed it before.
yeah, exactly. No, just like you mentioned, obviously going to practices and showing up every day and making that commitment to your team, and now just kind of transferring those skills and that skill set to bodybuilding.
Exactly. So between stopping those sports and finding your fiance and him being in competing and then you deciding to it, what was your lifestyle like? Like what kind of habits did you have to maybe develop or change to be successful in this sport?
So at the time I was working as a server, or I still am working as a server as well, but I was in the service industry. And honestly, I led a pretty sedentary lifestyle after I graduated from high school. I partied quite a bit, going through my um, early 20s, or sorry, yeah, early 20s, being in the restaurant industry. That's kind of what you did, right? You'd go to work and then after work, you would go out and party and drink quite a bit. And so that was kind of my lifestyle. So it was a big change. Kind of switching over to no longer drinking, following a restricted meal plan, and just committing to a structured plan and routine. Because at the end of the day, if you don't put in the result, or if you don't put in the work, you're not going to see the results. And I think at the beginning, I tried to like do both and then soon realized that it wasn't going to work. So it was a challenge for sure making that switch, but I'm so happy that I decided to commit to that and follow through. And
What did you find change like internally because of switching and no longer having that lifestyle?
I will say just my mindset, I feel like has changed quite a bit. I'm so more in tune with who I am as a person. And I feel like there's just been so much personal growth and development through bodybuilding that I will forever be grateful for. So I'm very, very happy that I found the sport.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things that we find in it is the discipline and that commitment and seeing that we can show up for ourselves and that it can actually be fun to put ourselves through.
You have
um,
slightly delusional to take on this sport and see it through, but still
Here
worth
we are.
it.
It's a special type of person, that's for sure. And that's why I personally like I love this community. Like I love this niche and I find that sometimes from the outside looking in, it's easy to judge it. Like how could that be enjoyable or rewarding or fun? And then you do it and you're like, oh, it's amazing. And like you said, you learn a lot about yourself. And I know you've mentioned in posts before that you found so much passion and community in this lifestyle. So in finding the passion, in finding the community and friendships, how has that influenced your experience in competing and upholding your desire to have fun with it?
Um, I look forward to going to shows. You know, I think you had mentioned earlier with me being one day out, and some competitors, you know, it might be a stressful time, but I have like zero worries and I feel so at peace because I know I've done everything that I possibly can and I have something to look forward to, right? So I'm excited to being in that environment and being with all the athletes and just sharing the love of the sport with the rest of the competitors. So
That's awesome. And did you feel like coming into this show that you had more of the piece than in your pro debut, or does it feel similar?
I would say it's very similar. I've watched quite a bit of podcasts that I feel like have kind of set me up to have a good mindset around competing. And what I mean by that is just not necessarily setting any expectations for yourselves when it comes to placing, right? So with each show, I kind of just go into it with, as Ashley Kay would say, Hayes in the barn, like I've done all that I can. So aside from showing up and doing my best, there's nothing that's in my control.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's important no matter where we're at in this journey because we don't know who's going to show up. We also don't know what might happen with us. Like you get sick, obviously not saying you personally, knocking on wood. Never mind. Uh, someone could get sick, someone could feel poorly, like your hair can get messed up in a way you don't expect. Like there could just be things that happen that you don't prepare for. Like I went on stage this year prior to going to nationals and my tan was just way lighter than I expected. And so when I was on stage and I got off, I was like so happy because I felt like I brought my best. But then like I watched some of the videos and my coach was like, you're tan. You need like three more layers almost. Like, and a lot of people looked light on stage, but it's like you can't prepare for that. But when I compared to the other women I placed against, like they looked better physique wise, but also if my tan was better, I feel like I would have had at least a little bit better of a shot too. So it's
Right.
just like every detail matters. You don't know what to expect. So why have
Yeah.
expectations? And like you said, you've done everything you can. So what are some of your personal boxes that you tick to know that you have really given it your all?
Well, I at the beginning of the week I set my week up. So I've got my training in there, my food, my cardio, and then obviously other life obligations. And as long as I make sure I haven't missed a workout, I haven't missed my cardio, I've gotten all my meals in, I've checked in with my coach, I know that I'm doing my part to set myself up for success.
Love that. And you work with James from Team
Yeah,
Atlas, right?
I do.
So
Yeah.
we've had him on the podcast. He was part of a coaches series. So I'm curious like what it's been like for you working with him and how his knowledge or expertise has influenced like your own because I know you have an interest in learning more.
It's been absolutely phenomenal working with James. He is just so knowledgeable in the industry, not only from like experience and being in the industry for a really long time, but he's constantly finding ways to improve. You know, he goes to all the shows to make sure that he is fully aware of what the judges are looking for. And he's a coach, but he's also been my mentor. So with my check-ins, he's not just like telling me what to do. We're kind of going through it very thoroughly, and he's showing me in the sense and explaining it in more in depth, and in terms of what I should be looking out for and what I shouldn't be looking out for. So it's been really, really cool just kind of being on his team and learning for him, and I'm learning from him, and I'm very excited to see where this relationship takes us, because we've only been working together for a short period of time. So it's really exciting to see where this could go.
So how has his coaching differed from past maybe approaches you've taken?
I think every coach has something different to offer. And I've learned so much from my past coaches. I think with James, because he is so involved in the industry, whereas like my past coaches were local coaches. So in terms of just really understanding the criteria, I would say that's where he really excels at. And just his communication as well, and just really showing that he cares about his athletes. I feel that.
That's super good. And I think it's really interesting too that you are going back to college to learn more. So this is specifically for your own journey, or you have other intentions with that? Only your journey.
It for right now, it's just for my own personal knowledge. I think right now my main focus is just being an athlete and competing as much as possible. But I find that you can never stop learning. And so going back to school for personal training would only help me further in developing in the areas that I need to. Just learning learning different approaches. So I'm excited for that.
That is awesome.
To say that maybe down the line I won't pursue a career in personal training, but for right now it's just for my own personal selfish gain.
Yeah. What are some of the things you're hoping to learn other than like different techniques or strategies? Like what is it that really motivated you to be like, I want to go into a classroom to learn this?
Well, I love learning, and Tyler's actually in school right now for personal training, and I had started a semester, and so just realizing that there's so much more to learn than I thought. It all seems pretty straightforward, but when you really dive into it and you dive into the different muscle groups and different mechanics and different movements, and there's just so much to learn. And so I want to be a student of the sport, and the best way for me to learn is to be in that setting.
I love that. I think it's cool that you want to study it and you want to understand it for yourself. And maybe, in some ways, I think that understanding helps us see the purpose in applying it more too.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's go back to 2019, because you brought it up earlier how after that show, after your first show, you loved it, but you didn't get to keep going because, of course, 2020 happened and you're in Canada, correct? So
Yeah.
that's definitely, there was not a lot of opportunity there. So what did you focus on before coming back last year?
So I will say are you still here? Yeah, okay. I had a thing and I wasn't quite sure. I will say, yeah, during COVID was probably the fittest I had ever been prior to being in high school and playing sports and whatnot. I had nothing else but time on my hands. So I went out and bought a whole bunch of equipment and just trained at home, and kind of built a little bit of physique during that time. And that's kind of what fueled my passion to get back into competing.
Interesting. So after your 2019 show, it was kind of like, well, there's no competitions on the horizon, but I still want to do this and live it.
Yeah. I don't think, yes, that was part of it, but I also think back to how committing to working out and how working out in itself just made me feel. And I was kind of chasing that feeling because it was such a hard time for everybody, right? Like the world shut down, you can't do anything, you can't see your friends. So I really found a lot of peace in just working out, and it just alleviated a lot of anxiety and built up stress that I was feeling at the time. It was kind of like my outlet.
Yeah, seriously. Because I imagine too, like, or maybe I'm wrong, but did it affect your jobs as well?
For a time, for a little bit, yes. All restaurants, like everything was closed for a 2, 3 month period, maybe not that long. But there was a time where I wasn't working. And so that's kind of what I decided to put my time and effort and focus into, was working out.
That is really cool. And I love how you identified the benefits that it brought you as well, because sometimes like we get so into the lifestyle, we forget how much it's actually adding because we're just focused on like improving or getting the best workout rather than like, wow, this is bringing so much to my life outside of just like a nice physique or outside of being able to step on stage. So you did come back and you had your time off prior to that. So how long was your prep? Because your first show was 6 weeks. So how long was this prep into this past season?
um, would you mind into this?
2022. Sorry, that was confusing.
That prep was a wake up call, because a big wake up call in 2019. Like I mentioned, I did a really short prep.
Yeah.
So worked out in my favor. And for my first show back, which would have been the Vancouver Open, a natural show later on in the year, I started prepping in April of 2022, and the show was in July. So what is that? Almost 16 weeks or so. So yeah, that was a bit of a that was a bit of a wake up call.
Change.
I was expecting with my first prep and didn't really get to that full extent. I went through tenfold with that prep.
Yeah, like an extra 10 weeks on top of it is a big change because if you went into the first one, like I got this 6 weeks, that got 6 weeks, like competitor time. At least I find when I talk to competitors, like if we say something's only 5 weeks away, we're all like, that's really soon, like no matter what. So being like 6 weeks out is a big deal, yet that's how you started. So then be in the 16-week out mentality, did you have to be in a deficit for most of that, or was part of it like, okay, it was mostly deficit?
Yeah, it was a deficit for the majority of it. My starting point, um, it not that it wasn't ideal, but I still had quite a bit of body fat to lose. I think I probably ended up losing about 15 to 20 pounds of body fat, and obviously a little bit of water, lost a little bit of muscle as well. But um, yeah, I thought it was going to be another walk in the park. I was going to cruise through. Not the case, but we persevered and pushed through, and the show went really well. So
Yeah, made it worth it, I'm sure then.
exactly.
That's good. So when you went through that 16-week process, and obviously it was different than your first show, different than what you expected. I think that that's relatable to a lot of competitors, first time competitors, especially, or people who maybe have had those smooth preps and then they come back and it's not as smooth, or maybe they're in their improvement season right now and they're like, I'm worried about my next prep. What if it's hard for me? So, what was the mentality you had either needed to create during that 16 weeks or did create through that 16 weeks that helped you?
I've always been goal oriented, and so I see things through no matter what. And I just kind of kept going back to that when it was really, really hard. I was like, you made a goal, you made a promise to yourself, and you can't break that promise. And so regardless of when I was doing hours of cardio or eating little to next food or getting no sleep or just all the like outside stressors of life, I'd made a goal and made a commitment to myself, and it was important to me to follow that through.
Definitely. Sometimes I look back on preps and I'm like, how did I do all of that on top of life? I'm like, because I'm in my improvement season now. So it's like, you're still training, you're still prepping your meals, tracking things. All of that's the same, but you're well fed, you're not doing tons of cardio. So like I look back, I'm like, where can I find the time, the energy? And it really is like a mental process. And each week I think prepares you for the next week where you're like, okay, I can commit to another 20 minutes of cardio. I can commit to more or less food and more time working out. And it just like naturally progresses that way. But you've
Right.
just had such a successful journey in competing so far. Like that's really amazing. And it's not normal, you know, like most people aren't on this like super amazing path of like multiple first places and overall wins. And you had 3 overalls. I'm looking at my notes, 3 overalls, 6 first places across all the classes you've done, this top 5 at your pro debut. So have you gotten, aside from obviously continuing to focus on your glutes, you said, have you gotten other feedback that you have found by acting on it like actually showing up with changing that has helped you present yourself the way you want to or getting better feedback?
I think just also my stage IQ, and especially going into the pro league, it's a bit different. A lot of things I found that I did in the amateur league, and they let some things slide, I will say, in the amateur league where they're not focused on so much on certain things and it doesn't make that big of an impact. But coming into the pro league, you're up against women that have been doing this for a really long time. So if one thing's off in your stage IQ and your stage presence, it stands out, right? So that was another feedback as well, just kind of being aware of my surroundings and making sure that I'm not only presenting my best physique, but doing it in the best way compared to the other athletes, I guess, if that kind of makes sense, right?
Totally. Although I've never heard the term stage IQ, and I think that's awesome. That is so cool. Like when you said stage IQ, what I thought is, and you tell me if this is like what it means, but I thought like how you are aware of what is going on stage. You're aware, okay, like what's required, what the judges need.
Yeah, exactly. Just knowing how much to angle, knowing where the other competitors are in the line, making sure you're all kind of transitioning at the same time. You're not walking too fast. Just those little, like your hair, just all of it.
Yeah, I think that's such a great term for it. Like I literally have never heard that. I just find that I'm going to utilize that in my own journey. Like, where's my stage IQ at today? Because sometimes, you know, you get in your own head or you kind of get into your posing routine and you never want to go through the motions. You really want to be present. So, what are some of the tweaks you made or kind of learned that maybe listeners can learn from as well as far as enhancing your stage IQ? Like, what are some of the things or maybe tips you could give to be better with your presence?
Just being prepared, I think, has helped me greatly going into the show, right? And I mean, I guess you never know what to expect until you're put in that situation. So, aside from physically going through the motions of going through different shows and just kind of learning and picking up on what it is that you need to be aware of, being prepared going into the show, and then just being focused when you're on stage and just like you said, not getting in your head about anything, and just really listening as well, and yeah, just being focused.
Yeah. I've heard this tip before and I tried it in my own posing practice where you like practice with the replay of a show going. Like, have
Yeah,
you done that?
I do that all the time. Yes. Yeah.
It really makes a difference because you're like, oh, the judges maybe are making them hold their poses or transition and walk back and forth many times.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually a thank you for bringing that up. That is something that I've done to kind of help me prepare for the stage and doing different shows as well, because each show is going to be different. And um, so that is a great tip.
Yeah, and even like athlete meetings are different too. Like I've been to athlete meetings where you're going through a line to do it, athlete meetings where you're sitting there to do it, athlete meetings where you have a specific time. And so I think the more experience you get naturally, the more confident you become too, and just being able to handle it and work with it. And and just continuing to learn. So I think it's great hearing from a pro as well, who's like, yeah, you know, at first maybe I didn't know all of this, but now that I've done it and practiced it and
Mhm.
given tools that, you know, you can utilize this even without ever stepping on stage.
Very true. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really awesome. So I want to talk to you about your work, if that's okay. Specifically as an interior designer. So I just bought my first house. Well, we're waiting to close on it anyways. We have to get our closing date.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. So, and I haven't said that on the podcast yet. So yeah, if I haven't, if no one knows, it's in process. But anyway, I was like, I'm gonna pick this interior designer's brain a little bit. So, before I ask you for like your insights on that side of things, what does a normal day or week look like for you balancing being a fiance, an interior designer, and a server, and of course a competitor? If you're looking for competition heels, jewelry, and fun competitor extras, then visit shoefairyofficial.com and use code Celeste for a discount at checkout.
So I will say before we move on with this, I no longer work as an interior designer. I
Okay.
decided to leave that job to kind of pursue bodybuilding a little bit more because that was a full-time
Awesome.
Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and then still working at Cactus and being a fiance and competing. Going to school, I just found I had a lot on my plate. So that was something that I decided to take off. But my day to day was very hectic.
I
I,
bet.
I will say. Essentially I would wake up fairly early in the morning. I'd probably be up around 5:30 or so, and I would get my workout in. And then I would go into work at the office, and I would just either be meeting with clients or meeting with different contractors or working on drawings. And that was an 8 to 4. And then I would just kind of go home and relax. Or if I had to work at the restaurant, I would go and do that. And then I would go back to the gym. And this is when I'm in prep. So I would go back to the gym and kind of work on my posing and do any cardio that I needed to do for the day. And then come back home and meal prep. And then
Yeah.
find to hang out with my fiance.
Right. That is like the hardest part I personally found in a prep is like when, especially when the prep is demanding, having time for like those little moments or at least really enjoying them when you get them is so important. And I actually really admire that you stepped away from interior designing to focus on this. I imagine that was difficult in some regard, but what called you to interior designing, and then what was it that made you decide like I'm going to prioritize bodybuilding instead?
I will say I am the type of person that likes to try new things and explore when it comes to careers. So, prior to being an interior designer, I was a salaried manager. I had gotten a certificate for business, so I did that for a little bit, tried it, didn't think it was for me. So then I wanted to pursue interior design. I found that I've always had a creative mind, a bit of a creative outlet. I can draw a little bit, but it's nice that everything's digital now. And so, yeah, I just wanted to give it a go and try that and see if I could make a career out of it. And after about a year and a half, I fell more in love with bodybuilding and decided that I wanted to pursue that path instead.
I have a similar story, but not as cool. When I was when I was younger, I really wanted to be an interior designer, and at like 9 years old for my birthday, I
Love.
asked my dad. Yeah, I was like, Dad, for my birthday, can you get me a URL so I can make a website?
Oh my
So
gosh.
he did. I got a URL. It was designed by Celeste.com, and I like put all these organizational projects and things I did around the house, and I had my parents like sign a contract that they were going to pay me for work around the house, and I loved it. I thought that was going to be my path until high school when I
Yeah.
found fitness, and I was like, I love fitness so much. And I realized with interior design, that's not just your creative energy. It's like you're working with a client. So it's not like HGTV pays it out. It's like, oh, you're on a budget. and you like this style. Never
And
mind.
don't like this, but you want me to, yeah.
I was like, and I did like a stage job that really opened my eyes to that. I did like some job shadowing in high school to kind of get a feel for it. And
Right.
I remember being like, I have to design the house based on what's in this warehouse.
Yeah.
I don't know anymore.
Yeah. I mean, with some clients, you are able to kind of put your own little twist to it. But the clients that I was working with, it was more so just being there to put everything together for them. So I wasn't able to be as creative as I had hoped with all the projects. And then, like I mentioned, I just had more of a love and passion for competing in bodybuilding. So I just decided to step away from that.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's awesome that you're the type of person who likes trying new things too.
Yeah.
But you did that and you have great experience with it. It was something that interested you. So do you find that you apply your skills from that to your own style, whether that be in your home or even with, because you have great fashion too. I love your posts, your photos. I'm like, this is amazing. So I'm curious if that's part of it.
100%. Yeah, my fiance is actually a Red Seal carpenter, and so that's actually what stemmed my interest in interior design because he has the ability to build things. And one day we just
Oh,
tore apart our apartment and kind of renovated everything. I was like, oh, like our place actually looks pretty good. Like maybe let's see if I can make a career out of this. So often I'm like rearranging our place and I also like to explore with different outfits and whatnot. So it's nice that I'm able to at least um, be creative in that sense.
yeah, you're like you're your own blank canvas, your apartment's your own blank canvas, so you get to have fun.
Yeah, exactly.
That is so cool. So now selfishly, what are some of your best tips for interior design or maybe hacks or things that you would consider when going into like a fresh home that you could share?
I would just say the mood that you're trying to convey and what it is that you want to feel when you're in that space and just kind of picking a color scheme according to that. And you're also picking your furniture according to that, right? I think there's so many different styles that you can design, but at the end of the day, it's important to set the mood and the tone based on how you want to feel when you're in that space.
So like if you're in your bedroom, you want to feel like cozy, relaxed. Maybe you're not painting your wall bright pink.
Yeah. Or some people want to feel absolutely moody and it's like black walls, right? Like it really is just so
Yeah.
also just finding what you're personally wanting to get out of that space. But yeah, like even with functional spaces like kitchens, you're going to have like bright lights. Even just picking a color that sets off that like that gives you that productive vibe, right? So
Yeah, I love that. I think it's gonna be so fun, like having this blank canvas is something I've always wanted. And like with my apartment, I can only do so much, right? Because I was renting it. So owning something and being able to do that is gonna be so fun. And like I think there's always that feeling of like you can like so many different styles. So
yeah,
your, advice on what's the mood, what's the feeling, I'm definitely gonna keep that in mind. Um,
no, that's awesome. That's super
thank
exciting.
you. Thank you. So I appreciate you sharing that. I might even hit you up and show you some stuff when I'm going through it.
I'll get some tips and some insight.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So now I'll get your advice for competitors. Okay, so what is your best advice for someone who has never competed before but would like to? And then your best advice for someone on their road to pro.
For someone who has never competed before, um, do your research. For sure. I will say I just kind of for my own personal experience, I just jumped into the show kind of blindly, not knowing what to expect. And it turned out okay for my first show, but then continuing to compete, just not having a full grasp of the expenses and what your body goes through and making sure that you're with the right coach. So I think it's really, really important to do your research, not only just about the sport, but what it takes to be successful in the sport.
Yeah.
For what was the other one? For
Someone on their road to pro.
someone on their road to pro. Enjoy the journey, honestly. Enjoy every single minute of it. Soak it all up. Have as much fun as possible. And show yourself grace because it's bodybuilding and it's a lifelong journey. And there's always a learning opportunity from each experience. So just be open minded. Don't rush the process, I guess.
Oh, no, that's such great advice. Like you just spoke to me. I mean, I'm really looking at it from that big picture. So I appreciate you saying that. And that reminder to have fun is especially key, especially I think when you're on your road to pro, it's easy to get in that
Yeah.
I gotta get it mindset instead of like the this is fun mentality.
Yeah, exactly. I find that I definitely put a lot of pressure on myself when I was working towards getting my pro card and just kind of reflecting back on that. I wish I had enjoyed it a little bit more, but I mean, it worked out.
You're here now.
Exactly.
That's
We're here.
awesome. Yes, well, I'm so happy you took the time to come on, especially one day out. So good luck tomorrow. I'm excited to see how it goes. You're welcome. And before we go, how can people connect with you and find you and follow your journey?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Rhoda and Allie. So I would love for everyone to give me a follow. I'm a bit of a goofball on there. And so if you want to have a good laugh.
Yes, I love that. And you've got YouTube, right?
I started my YouTube account, but it's not something that I've been actively working on. I have one video up, and as I continue to compete, I definitely will be uploading a lot more videos, but I'm definitely more active on Instagram than any other platform.
Awesome. Well, we'll for sure put your Instagram in the show notes page. You guys, that's always on celestial.fit/podcast. If you're listening right away, it'll be at the top of the page. If you're listening in the future, scroll down to the category section. It is alphabetized. So it'll be in the R's. It's alphabetized by first name. So you'll be able to find it there. Not just the links, but you're also going to see a full summary of the episode. You're going to see a bulleted list of the topics we covered, as well as the timestamps. So not only can you go back and click timestamps on YouTube to rewatch certain parts, but you can also let people know what your favorite part was or why they should listen, because I definitely appreciate it when you share these, and I know that the athletes do too. So make sure you tag us as you listen and leave a review if you feel inspired to. But with all that being said, Rhoda, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, Les. I had an absolute blast chatting with you.
Yes, me too, you. And to everyone listening, hope you have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you're in the world while you're listening to this episode. Just make it awesome.